Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out last week's episode 145, with Adam Gold and Angela Pine. Adam is currently working on his fitness business, as well as being a personal trainer and being in the military as well. And then Angela is a graphic designer. And we talked about their two experiences and talking about hustling together and having a positive relationship and working towards a common goal of being successful. Really great episode. It's really great to see two different paths in life and how they both unite together to also help each other succeed. It was just a really great way to compare if you wanted to see different career paths and see how a couple works together, basically. You can check that out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you like to watch your podcast, you can go on YouTube, search The Carroll Connection or Jared M. Carroll. Should pop up right for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at The Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So that brings me to today's episode 146 with Tyler Valerio, correct?
You got it.
Perfect.
It's like the gas station, but
yeah. I used
to get asked that growing up. You own the gas station? No.
I always right before, it must be just a weird nerve thing, because I'll say it and be like, yeah, I'm good with the last name, and then as soon as the camera's on, I'm like, and just pressure's on. And sometimes I don't even say the last name, because I had episodes where I recorded the intro 5 times. I was like, I'm not doing this shit no more. I'll just skip it and then just have them say it. But for the purposes, let the audience know just a little bit who you are and what you're doing currently.
So I'm 31. I work with animals. I got 4 dogs. I'm married. I'll be married 4 years in September.
Congrats. That's awesome.
We've been together though for 8 or 10 years. Pretty much what I do. I'm sober.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk a lot about that as the podcast progresses, and kind of your journey through that and how that's led to right now, and then kind of wanting to come on the podcast and talk about that as well. My first topic I always like to talk about, because I like to go a little bit chronologically here, because we're talking about your life as well, is talking about family dynamic. And for people that are listening for the first time, I like to explain why that I'm doing it too, to give them a little cliche fucking imagery. Is I talk about building a good house. You need a great foundation to build a house, and everyone's foundation is their childhood, is their upbringing, their family, their parents, grandparents, whatever it is. And I do this to kind of try to really understand where people are coming from, because a lot of the stuff in childhood does seep into our adult lives. So I find it important to kind of talk about this and just kind of see where people are. So whatever you're comfortable with, I'll allow you to kind of go into that.
So my parents are divorced. They got divorced when I was 2. So I just grew up with that. That's just how I knew it. My mother got remarried when I was 8. I got an older sister from my mother and father. And then my mother got remarried when I was 8. I got a little brother who's 21, and I got a little brother and sister who just turned 18, which is pretty weird.
How's that being kind of the older sibling, and do you take into consideration kind of being more of a role model now that you've gotten older and stuff too?
Yeah, definitely. My little brothers are they're grown-ups now. It's crazy, and it's good to see that, I can have a positive impact on them now, rather than just being the crazy older brother. You know what I mean? That's my older brother, but it's nice to be able to be that positive, role model now.
Yeah, definitely.
I like to think I am,
Yeah.
Pretty close with my little sister too, so.
That's good. Yeah. How was dealing with the divorce? What age did you say you were?
2.
2. So it was kind of just always there growing
that's how
up.
it was. I grew up 2 different houses, When I turned to 14, it was, my dad's a musician, so out till 2 a.m. gigging. If he's out at 11, he goes to the Chinese restaurant, has a scorpion bowl, you know what I mean? Bring me home beef teriyaki, I'm high as shit. So I was like, this is how I want to live. So I moved in with him pretty much. And, but I always kept a good relationship with my mom. She lived in Seekonk, so that's how I went to Seekonk schools. My dad lived in North Attleboro and then Pawtucket, and then we lived in North Attleboro again.
Do you think bouncing between the houses ever caused any like maybe mental health struggles at all, or did you ever think or compare yourself maybe to like your friends or anything in the way their structure?
It definitely played. I got a lot of anxiety, so it's like when my dad would pick us up, I'd be worried about my mom. Like she doesn't have us there. More so with my dad, I was always worried because he was alone. You know, my mom got remarried; she had someone, but I always felt like my dad was just by himself, and like he likes that lifestyle. Like he's by himself now, and he loves it. But I always felt guilty, like I couldn't do more. You know what I mean? So it kind of, I think it fucked me up a little bit.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
it definitely seems like too, as you've gotten older too, like you've taken time to kind of like address things that need to be
Yeah,
addressed and work through that. And I think that's
yeah.
important too.
And my parents always got along. Like it was never an issue. Like never fights, never blowouts, never, this one keeping me from that one. And they got along well. And it was nice to see that, like two people co-parenting. You don't see that a lot anymore. So it was good to see that. And comparatively to like other friends growing up, I mean, it was the same. I had two parents who took good care of me. So
That's good, too. Like the fact that they were able to like co-parent in a healthy
yeah,
way, like
yeah,
that's very uncommon, and
yeah,
like especially like nowadays too, like you see a lot more divorces and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Unfortunately, so like the households are a little bit more split. And I wonder if social media causes issues in those relationships. Obviously, we're kind of speculating about that, but like
Yeah.
I'm more thinking just the fact of like kudos to them for being able to like at the time to just co-parent and like exist
Yeah.
like that and to allow you to kind of experience
Yeah.
both parents and
Yeah.
like be respectful, because like that can really make or break kids too,
Yeah.
especially at being so young. You just
Yeah.
knew that right away, so it makes me wonder if like being so young you were just kind of just used to it, and instead of
I
you
think
never really saw them together
no,
like
that's
that.
just how I grew up. That's just what I was used to. Like my wife, her parents got divorced when she was in high school. Miserable. Fucked her up. You know what I mean? They get along well now. I think us getting together, we invited, so when I proposed to her, we went to a restaurant that we first went to on our first date. It was in Plainville. It's now a dispensary
Oh
run
yeah,
by Andrew Medeiros.
yeah.
So it was in that building. And when I went to propose to her, I invited like her mother, her father, my mother. My dad was actually playing that night. He was playing piano and he had his friend singing, and a couple close friends. And that was kind of like the start that like brought them back together almost. And I feel like our relationship through the wedding, through, getting together for family things, like now they have a better connection, which is nice because I knew it took a toll on my wife because you don't want to see your parents. Like every kid, like I used to ask for that for Christmas. I want my parents to get back together and I want a puppy. So it's like everybody wants that. So I'm very grateful like my parents did that because not everybody has that. Like, my wife. So
Yeah, definitely. And I've heard that similar kind of stories through the podcast
yeah,
too. And like my parents are still together, and like it always makes me want to ask those questions, because like
yeah,
I want to understand people
yeah,
and where they're coming from, because like that obviously like has affected you and you've
yeah,
kind of grown through that.
yeah,
But it's still, for me, when we're talking about your life, it's important to know these things.
yeah,
And I appreciate that you're willing to share these
yeah,
things, because not everyone is going to
yeah,
be as open and like forthcoming as you are
yeah.
talking about that. And
Vulnerable being important.
yeah,
You're
I
not
would
gonna
agree with
get
that.
anywhere if you're not vulnerable.
Exactly. And I try to preach that as much as I can, because I don't think enough people really want to open up, because
Yeah,
like they're scared. They're
yeah,
scared that people are going to use it against them
yeah,
and like kind of hurt them again.
yeah,
And I understand that, and that's valid. But it's really important to kind of open up to people
yeah,
and to trust again. And
yeah,
like, I think, as weird as this is to say, but I think the kind of like some of the purpose of life is to experience all emotions.
yeah. I agree with that.
I think like pain too is like one of those
Yeah,
ones that creates change, and
yeah,
like as we grow through pain and stuff like that, something like that is
yeah,
like really like can be painful
yeah.
if you're in bad situations. So it's like
I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't struggle. You know what I mean? You gotta you gotta go through the shit times to appreciate what's good. I think that's an important aspect of life.
yeah, and I think if more people were willing to embrace the
Yeah,
shit sometimes,
yeah,
like that's
yeah,
like it's important to go through this shit,
yeah,
and like I always like talk about the cliche of like climbing a mountain and like seeing other mountaintops, and like that's kind of life. Life is just mountains. Like it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, and like the peaks are always great, but you can't stay there forever. And it's like you have to kind of like constantly move through that. And I think it's important. As you were growing up and going through your childhood, were there any sports or hobbies or things that you did to kind of help you make friends, or just things that you enjoyed doing in general?
Yeah, so I played baseball, basketball, golf, growing up. In the like the town leagues. I wasn't any good at baseball and basketball. Getting into like middle school, trying out for the teams. I tried out for middle school baseball all 3 years, never made it. And you would think when I was like in 8th grade, they'd be like, "All right, like let's give the kid a break." But I continued to play golf. I played golf through a little bit of high school, so I met a lot of people through that. I also met a lot of people. My dad's a musician, so I kind of grew up playing music, jumping on instruments, and I met a lot of kids through like shows, like going to concerts, like at the Living Room in Providence. I don't know if you remember that. Over near IHOP, it was like this rundown place where you could see like 3 great bands for $10. I was like 13 years old, smoking cigarettes in there. It was a wild place, but yeah, I met a lot of people like that. Probably not the greatest people, but that was how I met a lot of people. I kind of fell off on sports.
Did you play like a lot of instruments? Did you get really into music at that time by being introduced that through like your dad?
Yeah, I played saxophone in high school, in elementary school, and then I played drums in middle school, and then going to shows and stuff, I kind of got into like the more like band scene, and I had a band with some kids in Seekonk, and we used to jam and just kind of everything. I'll just do anything. I make hip hop now.
Okay, yeah.
Me and a couple guys, we have like a live group where we play shows, and then me and one of the kids write the music. He produces all of it.
And you do that actively still?
Yeah,
Like, to this day? Nice.
And it's like a lot of mental health awareness, but it's cool because it's like hip hop. It's like cool music, but I'm not rapping about toting guns and getting money and fucking bitches. Like I'm talking about stuff people can relate to that a lot of people are afraid to say.
Yeah, I think that's really great to like kind of pull away from even that like narrative of that whole genre is really directed towards like the guns and the women and like drugs and partying.
Hip hop is about your struggle, and that's my struggle. That's what I relate to. So
yeah, and I think that's really gonna resonate with a lot more people versus trying to be something you're not. And I think a lot of people do that when, especially they go for music, especially the hip hop genre, is they will try to rap like their favorite artists, and like you just can't do that. You have to be yourself, and regardless of whatever like creative endeavor that you want to go on, is like you got to figure out your path. And I imagine like you kind of had to go through that journey yourself and figure out what you wanted to like rap about and write about. Do you enjoy writing more or like actually rapping more?
I used to freestyle a lot. That was like my thing. Parties,
That was the party trick.
Yeah. But I enjoy writing because it's like you can write a little story, you can, and I used to just like, I was so quick. I would just write something out and then I would just recite it. Now I like go back and I try and make things easier for people on the ears. Like I'm not trying to say like Eminem, like 10 words in 3 seconds. I'm trying to get a point across in a way that everybody can relate with, but also, get across what I want to get across in like a funky kind of way.
Do you do it more as like currently as like a hobby, or are you pursuing, do you want to do it as like a career?
It's like for me. I make shit, put it out. If you want to listen to it. But for me, it's such a therapeutic process. Like I get to write it. Like say I have a bunch of sad songs like about shit I go through, and I get to write that when we just put out maybe like a year ago when I got a year sober, we put out a tape called 1 Year In. And a lot of those songs, I was so low, and I got to record them, and then I get to listen back to them, and I get to acknowledge when I'm in a better place how low I was and be so grateful for not being there anymore. And I feel like that's like they always say in therapy, hospital and stuff, journal, so you can write stuff down, so you can get it out of you. That's my way to get it out of me, and then I get to listen to it back and appreciate where I'm at. So it's pretty cool. I do it for me. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. But
I'm so glad you brought up the journaling concept. And like in like the weird way, like this podcast has been my open journal through the episodes. Like, yes, I'm interviewing people, and yes, I do solos, and those I would say are more my open journal sessions. And I try to look at those because I was telling you how I don't like doing solos, but like when I do them, I used to really use them as like my chance to kind of just say what I'm feeling about something. And I still do that obviously on these episodes, like I'm doing right now. But I think it's important to have that ability to kind of, especially with technology, you can record yourself. You're able to have that.
Exactly.
And it's like cool to be able to, like you said, look back and like be able to acknowledge that. And I was showing you like the tattoo of like my grandfather's signature and his quote. And that episode really is like one of the ones that keeps me like pushing with this. And I was at a family reunion last Saturday, and a lot of his siblings, obviously they're older and stuff, were there and were coming up to me, and like obviously they don't always remember your names, like 'cause they're older, but they're like, I just really appreciate you like recording the episode with Jim. Like I'm so glad that you did that, and like to hear that from his siblings was like so like rewarding. Like I knew they felt that way about it because I've talked to them about it since, because that episode was a while ago when I first started. But just to hear them, like even some of them, like I still go back and listen to it just to hear his voice, and like to be able to give them that is like you can't put a price tag on that.
No,
like,
and that's the great thing. Like you get the value of it, and if other people do too, that's the beauty of art. You know, not everybody's going to understand it, but the people who do, they have that. You know,
it's so important too. Is like making sure what you're creating is essentially for you, and then I think people will enjoy that because we all have things that we're interested in. We all have things that relate on stuff, and this is why I talk about all these different things. Is because like you are talking about just music and stuff, but I'm able to relate it to podcasting in a similar fashion, and it's all under the umbrella of being creative and having something.
You got to have an outlet.
Yeah, it's so important to have an outlet. I don't think enough people have an outlet. They will. Some people, even just fitness is an outlet for people. Like you got to have just something, maybe going for a walk, going for a hike, doing a podcast, doing music. Like you got to have your, what's the thing? Like not even like your fix, but like, I can't think of the phrase that I'm thinking on the top of my head. It's like stuck there, but
your drug.
Essentially kind of, it's like you're kind of like break from reality. Like, I think a lot of people, especially in today's culture, latch on to like the Gary V's of the world that like promote like grind and hustle, and I've definitely veered away from that. Like I just want to do things that I enjoy. Like I don't care if like I become rich and famous. It's not the goal of life.
Yeah, it's for you.
I think with just like even like you're saying, I know it's like with like for you, and like the thing that people push with like making money and like being successful and all this stuff. Like I just constantly think about like the end of my grandfather's life. Like he was lucky. It was during COVID. It was, he realistically would have been in like a hospice situation, but he was allowed to be in his own home. He was surrounded by all his grandchildren, all his children, his wife, and we're all just there around. Like in that moment, no one asked how much he made. No one asked what he did. We were just there enjoying each other's presence. And like,
you can't get buried with all your money.
Exactly. And it's like,
can if you got gold.
I mean, if you want to be very selfish, we can go the mummy route in like Egypt and do that. But it's like, I think people have, especially in today's culture with like the internet and stuff, we've latched onto the wrong things. I've been open about being a victim of that too, and like trying to get the viral instant like clicks and being that celebrity on TikTok. Like it's not a healthy mindset to be in, and like you're gonna draw the wrong attention. And I don't think that that's extremely healthy.
And you're gonna say more than you would in real life.
I
mean, you're gonna create this fake persona of yourself based off the internet, and then you can't back it up because saying shit you don't believe in, saying to argue with this one, argue with that one, you wouldn't argue with them in person. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like social media people just put on this fake front because they want the clicks, they want the likes. It's just.
They want to be accepted into a group. And I think like what I've noticed is, and I'm not saying it's bad or good or anything like that, but the collapse of like religion in our culture was like a glue for a lot of people to believe into something. And now a lot of people don't believe in anything. And I think that's somewhat kind of unhealthy sometimes. Not saying you need to believe in a God or something, but like to not believe in anything, like that's kind of just like an empty. It's like, what's the point? I feel
like it's also like it could be in correlation with like finding your purpose. You know what I mean? Like both my parents are religious. My dad plays organ, does choir, he's the choir director and children's choir director, and he's real into church. My mother goes to church, I think 2 Easters ago she got baptized. They did it in a hot tub at the church. I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm not religious, but they're also not ones to like push it on, because you got to find your own niche. You got to find what you believe in, like, whatever it may be. Like, you could believe in a three-headed dog for all I care, but you got to have something to keep you going. And I'm not saying I necessarily do, but I guess over the past years I've wanted that, but I think it's just, you have to just believe in yourself. That's what's important. You're the one getting up every day. If you don't believe in yourself, there's no point in believing in something in the sky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And even like believing in like your family and
Yeah.
like supporting for your pets, like
Yeah.
even something as simple as
Yeah.
like that could be
Yeah.
like, that's what you believe in.
Yeah.
And like that motivates you. And I think people just need something to believe in. And like, whether, like you said, it's like the three-headed dog, or it could be your family or God or universe or whatever, you need that. Like, and I think that's when I feel like personally I've struggled the most, is when I didn't have all the guidance or believe in something. Like, I'm not religious by any means. I would say spiritual, if anything, but having the belief that I, even just like losing my grandfather, knowing that he's with me and believes in this podcast and believes in me as a person and supports it, like, that's enough. Like, I always like to say that even like friends that I've lost over the years, like, I believe in them. I might not believe in a quote unquote God, but I believe in them. And like, that's the stuff that like can keep you going, is like, they are no longer here to experience this current life right now, but we are lucky to do that. So it's like to continue doing that, not only for them, but for yourself, like you kind of said. And I think believing in yourself is like so important. And that's something that tons of people struggle with. So I think it's like great that we hit on that. I want to start turning a little bit into getting towards that, like kind of like post high school. Like we talked a lot about off podcasts where things became more of an issue with like drinking and stuff for yourself. And over like the last couple years, you're able to kind of right the ship and be sober and practice that. So I'll kind of let you go onto the floor and talk about this, about kind of like how you came to sobriety and like working through these things, kind of starting from that like high school place and going kind of like graduating, like going through that process.
So getting through high school was miserable. I went to a vocational school. I was doing great. I was in graphic design. I was first in my class in shop. I wasn't paying attention to any of my academics. So they were like, hey, basically, you're going to flunk out my sophomore year. Seekonk was like, we'll take you back. We'll get you to pass. So I went back to Seekonk High. Within like 7 days of being back at Seekonk High, I got in a fight. And I was walking up the stairs and, just mumbled under my breath. I was like, I'm going to kill this kid. Boom. Automatic, like, expulsion hearing. I had to write a letter to the kid's family, and his mother is actually now my insurance agent. But it was just like, okay, welcome. I'm at Seekonk. You got to deal with me now. So I got through my sophomore year. Junior year, I was ready to drop out. I was like, what am I going to high school for? This is miserable. I went to BCC, and I did like a dual enrollment program where you got your high school credits, but you also got your college credits. And I was like, okay, this is dope. 16 years old going there. I'm not going to class. I'm going to KFC. I'm riding around smoking cigarettes and weed with, people from Seekonk that are older than me that I know that go there. Flunk out of that. So Seekonk's like, we'll get you back. We'll, get you to pass for the year. We'll go into senior year. Senior year, I go in and they're like, we got this new program called On Track. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It was like you had to work 10 hours a week. It was for, like, there was a kid in there who had a child and needed to work. There were kids in there who, didn't, it's like trying to get every circus animal to jump through a hoop. The school system's not for everyone. So this was for those kids so they didn't drop out, so you could get them through. And it was like 4 days a week. We did math. We did how to balance a checkbook, how to check your bank account and how to manage money. History, we did the history of Seekonk and just bullshit, fun shit to learn. We went and like some ghost place up on in Rehoboth on 44. Science, we built greenhouses and grew vegetables and plants and things like that. I can't think of the other one. English. We learned how to write a resume. Shit like that. Like useful stuff. I was doing great. I was soaring through it, getting all my work done. They got on our case, or my case, and was like, you need to do your work now to get it done. And I'm like, no, listen, I have a system. This is how I work. Had it with that. I was like, fuck this. So I actually walked out of the library and I put my foot through the glass door and it fucking shattered and spiderwebbed. And I called my dad and I was like, Dad, I can't go back to school. I was like, they're never going to let me back here. So I go to drop out. I get all the papers, all that shit. They were like, just come back to school. We'll get you through. Go back to regular school. We'll get you through. Get you to graduate. There were like 2 months left. I go back, get in another fight, break my foot. They were like, you're good. We'll let you walk. Just like, don't come back to school. So high school was miserable, to say the least. As soon as I got out of high school, the pattern just kind of continued. Didn't want to go to college. Parents were like, you got to work. So I start working jobs here and there, working at Walmart. I worked at Applebee's at one point. And just kind of going down the rabbit hole of starting to discover drinking and starting to discover drugs. I started smoking cigarettes and weed when I was 12 years old. So I had that, influential neighbor who was a little older than me who just kind of got me into it. So that became more accessible as I got older, and I just kind of fell into that routine of getting messed up, working a dead-end job that I don't like, but do it because I get money. And it just started to spiral, and my mental health was also starting to take a serious toll on me. So when I was like 13, I got diagnosed with anxiety and OCD. I went to like a clinic. My sister, she saw a therapist, and she wanted to meet me, the therapist. So I went in, and she immediately told my parents, she was like, you got to get this kid some help. He's got some stuff going on. So I got diagnosed with anxiety, OCD, went to Bradley a bunch of times, did all that, went in inpatient, did some programs. And then, so that was also why high school was tough, because I'm going through all this shit as well. And it was almost like a stigma at that point. Like, oh, he's crazy, don't mess with him. He's crazy. He's in the hospital, shit like that. So 17, 18, 19, 20, I started, getting heavy into depressions, and I got diagnosed with a mood disorder. Now I'm going to adult hospitals because I'm 18. So now I'm getting inpatient because, now the depression's hitting me so hard. I'm not doing anything with my life. I'm drinking and doing drugs. It's just all barreling down. So I try to kill myself a couple times. Thankfully, it doesn't work, because I wouldn't be here, and I'm so happy that I still am here. But that really started like my hospital stays, and I'd go inpatient here, I'd get out, I'd have to do a day program for a while, starting to take a bunch of medications, starting to see doctors and therapists regularly. My problem was I always fell off, because I was like, I'm good, I feel great, now I don't need it, and I'd fall off it, then I'd wind up back in the hospital. And that pattern continued for a while. When I met my wife when I was like 23. And that definitely put a new aspect on me. I was in a relationship before that. And, we had a dog, we lived together. And then I met my wife, and, I was always faithful and stuff, but she kind of stole me away. And I'm grateful she's my wife now. But, I started to get a little more on track because I wanted to commit to a relationship and stuff, but I'm still out doing all that shit. And it just got to a point where I wasn't like an everyday alcoholic. I wasn't like, hey, I need to wake up and drink, or I need to come home and sit down and have a drink, or like I get the shakes or something. It wasn't like that. It was like if I was drinking, I was getting fucked up. And it was, I call it the apology tours, because I would either get in a fight with this one, I'd break something of this one's, I'd say this to this one, I'd do this to that one, then in the morning I'd have to wake up, hey, sorry for doing that. And it's like, people don't want to hear that shit. It's like the same old, every time Tyler got drunk, he does this, he does that, he apologizes the next morning, happens again next weekend. So that's kind of started to fall into a pattern, and I was just doing that. And I thankfully found a career. I started working at a daycare, working with dogs, realized I wanted to get into the medical field. And I had that going for me, but still I couldn't get out of that routine of getting fucked up and not taking care of my mental health. And it wasn't until maybe, my wife was a huge part of helping me get there. And it wasn't until maybe like 2 years ago where I was like, okay, like I was having the worst depressions of my life. I would be in bed. I wouldn't get up. I'd call out of work for a week straight, you know, just like low, as low as you can get, not even getting up to go to the bathroom, just holding it in because I don't want to get out of bed. And, still taking care of my animals, but not to the extent that I should because I can't even take care of myself. And it got to a point where I decided I needed to get some help, and I kind of got on track, started getting medication, got back in with my doctor who I hadn't seen in a while. And then it just kept getting lower. And there was one night, it was my buddy's birthday, and we went over there and we were drinking. And my problem was drugs. Like if I would drink, I'd want to do drugs. It kind of goes hand in hand. And, there were some drugs around and I'm trying to stay away from it. So I'm like, I'm getting drunk. My wife tells me if I do drugs again, she's going to up and leave me, take the dogs, take the apartment, all that shit. So, I'm getting hammered, and I had a rental car at the time, and I was drinking red wine, and my wife had to drive home, and I threw up all over the rental car. My neighbor who worked for Kia, where I got the rental car from, was in the driveway. She sees it. I wake up the next morning, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, let's not drink. So I just went one day at a time, and it almost became like a game where I was like, okay, I made it 7 days. Let's see if I can make it 30 days. And I hit 30 days on my birthday. My 30th birthday. I hit 30 days sober, and I was like, okay. And that's gotten easier over time, but through that process, I didn't realize, and this is something my therapist and I talk about, I didn't realize how much of a role it truly played in my life until it was out of my life. And I got deep again, started having bad depressions. And, thankfully I'm on medications now that work, and I don't promote drugging people up because there were times when I was on like 7-8 medications because this one interacts with this, and then this one fixes this side effect. So like, I take minimal amount, but I feel like I'm at a good place. But, it's been dark, and it's like from after high school until my 30th birthday was just my 20s were madness. And I'm fortunate I've made it through them, with a couple failed suicide attempts, thankfully. And, I'm a huge advocate now of mental illness and also now addiction, because now I see how hand in hand the two go. Like when I was on hospital units, they'd always put me on dual diagnosis, because if you say you drink or you do drugs, they're like, okay, we're going to assume he has a problem because he also has mental illness. I don't know if that answers.
No, yeah, and
I kind of went off on a rant.
No,
there.
that was like, I think that was good, and I always like to say, like, I appreciate you for like actually being open enough to express that, because that is a lot, and that is heavy for a lot of people to kind of talk about. That's like heavy stuff there, and I think a lot of people can gain a lot from that, and I think it's important for people to share their story, and like this is like textbook part of the reason why I do these podcasts is for people like yourself who have gone through something that want to talk about it. And I think it's important because you're hitting on the overarching point of the podcast is mental health. And like it's affected my own life. It's affected people in my family, like friends. Like this is something
discriminate.
Exactly.
Doesn't care your race, religion, sex, anything.
It affects everyone, like you said. And it's just, you can't get around it. And it's like I definitely could see how getting off it too is also going to send things into a spiral, because like if you relied on it for a while and like it's something that was consistently in your life, to remove that, I've even seen that in my own life when I stopped drinking for a long period. I stopped drinking for like over a year, because like, and it wasn't because like I wasn't addicted to it. I realized that, and it sucks that our culture really promotes alcohol the way it does, because it's really not. Crazy. It's like one of the worst things for you. Like you're literally drinking a toxin. Like we just like normalized it, and it's crazy that people have accepted that over the years. And it's like, I'm not saying that don't drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Like, it is fun. I'm not gonna say it's
Exactly.
not. And like, a lot of people can handle it.
Yeah.
But like, a lot of people don't really truly care, or maybe they don't understand the effects it has, not only on your physical body, but like your mental health
Your
too as well.
relationships as well. Yeah, and it's like I come from my mother's side of the family. She's one of 8. Her brother and sister are special needs, and then of the remaining 6, 4 of them were alcoholics or drug addicts at some point. Some are recovering, some still battling. But I was like, I got enough shit going on. I don't want to have that interfering with me trying to be better. And it's like I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, hey, yeah, you can drink. I don't care. I hang out with people now, you know. It took a while. I had to really remove myself from those situations because it's so tempting, especially when you're an addict, you know. It's so easy to fall back into those patterns, and I think that's a huge thing about getting sober is you can't put yourself in those situations. You know, I wasn't going to shows, I wasn't going to parties, I wasn't going out, I was sitting at home. And it gave me a positive because I spent a lot of time with my dogs and I love my fucking dogs. But you start to realize like what's important in life. And like, I think everybody should go a month without drinking and just see how it feels. Cause it's like you said, it's so into our culture. It's so integrated into our culture that it's like, you go to a cookout, you're grabbing beer. They got a cooler full of beer. You go to a sports game, you're grabbing a beer. You know, it's just like you go out after work, you're grabbing a beer. It's the same routine for everyone. And I think breaking out of it is so important, even if it's not, you know, even if you go back to it. I always say when I'm on my deathbed, I'm getting fucked up, drinking, doing drugs. I'm going wild.
I think you're hitting on an important point, and I think I would also co-sign that. Try a month.
Yeah.
Like, I think not enough people realize how much their daily functions will just improve. Even if you're just a weekend drinker, just to cut that out for a month will do wonders, not only for your mental health, but your financial health too. Like, you think about how much money you spend on like just like beers at a bar, like, or even if you just like buy it from like a local store or whatever, like cut that out and go out to a nice dinner with your significant other or your brother or your friend or whatever. Like I think it is also important, like you said, to like substitute something else into it too as well. And like, don't put yourself in those situations, even because it is hard to avoid those situations. Because like you said, it's
you have
everywhere.
to change your whole lifestyle. You know, everything I loved to do involved drinking. So I had to completely change what I did. Like Friday night, usually stop at the liquor store, grab a bottle of Jameson, start drinking at home, go meet up with people, do this, do that. It's like now Friday night, I'm like, okay, what the fuck do I do? So now Friday night, I go home, I grab my dogs, I take them for a walk. That's my new having a drink when I get home from work, you know? And it's like when you put these positive things in your life, you start to see what's important to you without the alcohol or the drugs. And I just think it's, you know, it's a better life for me, that I'm not going to fall back into those ways. And I think in conjunction with getting sober, I've seen my mental health improve. Because when you're drinking, you know, you're drinking and you're getting fucked up that night, but you're going to deal with the repercussions the next day. When I was doing cocaine, I was dealing with the repercussions for a week. It was like a week of hell after just doing it one night because it's fucking up your system. You know, you're going haywire. So it's like people don't see the long-term repercussions. And obviously extended drug use is going to damage your brain. So it's like, I don't know. And I account a lot of my mental health to drugs because it's like when I was like 17, I was going to the club, I was doing ecstasy. And it's like ecstasy affects the part of your brain that controls your mood. And it's like, I was anxious, I had OCD, I had some depression, but then I started to get a mood disorder and now I'm bipolar. That's my diagnosis. So it's like you have, and I was doing that 13, 14 years ago. And I feel like now it caught up to me and now I'm dealing with it, and not saying that I can't deal with it because it's obtainable. But it's something that I did that I got to own up to now.
Yeah, and it's kudos to you for being willing to like address it. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people will run from it and lean into
Yeah.
it more. And
Yep.
like that's the easiest thing to
Yeah.
do is to not fight your demons. The hardest
Yeah.
thing in this life is to fight your own personal demons and get
Yep.
over that. And I think people will run from it. And even just like to go off of like how you'll feel so shitty after using like the next day and like the
Yeah.
repercussions. Like even now, like I don't drink like that. And like I went to like Cape Cod, like see wearing the shirt like 2 weeks ago. And even just drinking like a few beers, then like that, like just in the middle of the night, how my body was just so like, what the fuck are you
Yeah.
doing? Like I
Yeah.
hadn't drank in so long. It was just like, what is this? Like
Yeah.
you don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, I jokingly say to people like during the summer, like I have to train my body to actually drink because
Yeah.
like it doesn't, your body doesn't want that.
No.
Like your body knows what it needs and what it
Yeah.
doesn't need. And like your hangover when you're, especially when you're drunk the next day, it's a withdrawal. Like
Yeah.
people don't want to
Yeah.
call it that. Like they
Yeah.
want to call it a hangover. It's a withdrawal because it's a
Exactly.
drug.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how many people don't want to call alcohol a drug.
Yeah.
Like it is a drug.
It is.
And I think our culture, I'll never understand. I mean, money talks. So at the end of the
Yeah.
day, that's what drives things. And hopefully we never see like,
Yeah, it's such a big market. It's like
yeah, it's hard to
you
like,
see all these celebrities going in with their new alcohols. It's like it's a scheme. It's getting money.
yeah,
It's never gonna stop.
definitely no. Definitely no. It's
You
just,
see, like now I notice it more when I'm like watching TV. How many alcohol commercials there are? How many sponsorships for sports team? It's like Budweiser, the official beer of the NBA. You know what I mean? It's like no, you should have like fucking Pampers, the official diaper of the NBA. You know what I mean?
it's like that and pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
Those two companies hand in hand. Like I'm pretty sure we're like, it's us and New Zealand are the only countries in the world that allow pharmaceuticals to have commercials and advertisements, which is like crazy that we even do that. Like, I get the exposure concept to like let people know, but like that's just a wild thing to me. It's like call 1-800 and then they list you could die, like, or you'll have
if you
something
experience
failure.
depression, try this medication. It may worsen your depression.
It's like ask a doctor. It's like it's just like
you should just be going to your doctor in the first place.
it's like that, and just try to be healthy. Like we like in this culture in 2023, you know what's good and what's bad for the most part. Like natural foods, less processed food, water. Like we know. Like get sunlight.
Liquid death.
I like that. Like I like the because I forget what podcast I was listening to, and they were talking about that, and like, isn't it like aimed towards like helping people with like addiction almost because it's supposed to. I know the can's made.
So this is what helped me quit drinking. Believe it or
That's
not.
what they talk about. Is because it looks like a beer can, and like it's to
have
make you
that.
fit in almost. Like
I'd go to a party and I'd crush fucking 9 liquid deaths, but it's like it's water. I'd go to the beach. I'd grab a 12-pack. I'd be on the beach shotgunning liquid deaths. It's like, you know, it's that feeling of holding a can. I used to drink Narragansett, so it's like same thing, same can. But it definitely has helped. And if Liquid Death would like to sponsor me, I'll certainly take it. But yeah, it's like little things like that.
That will definitely
play
help.
A big part.
How has been, I should say, therapy been since you become sober? Has that been like a very crucial tool in like progressing day in and day out?
So I didn't I didn't go to therapy for a long time, and I actually haven't been to therapy in 2 months. That's kind of an unrelated topic, but when I started the therapy, I didn't realize how much drugs and alcohol played a role into why I was feeling the way I was feeling. My therapist essentially explained to me your reward path. You know, you do cocaine, you get this immediate rush, you feel great, your body says it wants more, you do more, you feel great, you're drinking, you get home from work and you have that beer and it settles you down. You're like, okay, that's what I needed. And then when you don't have that, your body just kind of goes like, what the fuck? Where's our stuff? You know, why aren't we getting? And then your whole perception on things changes because you're like, I feel like shit. I feel like I haven't, been good to myself, but it's because you're not putting those shitty things in your body. And it's just with therapy, I didn't realize how much those things play a part into how they literally change the way your brain functions. And it's like, I don't think people realize that, And it took the therapist to kind of explain that to me, because I was like, hey, I'm sober. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I'm good. Like, I'm not going to touch them again. And that's truly how I feel. But like, it didn't register with me until he started explaining, okay, a lot of your feelings have to do because you're not drinking anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, that kind of clicks.
Yeah, it's crazy how our people don't understand like the habits that you have on top of the stuff that you do.
Yeah.
Your body gets used to that routine,
Yep.
and it's like the same thing if you go on the weekends and like you just want to drink and do drugs, like, and then you stop doing that. Your body's like you said, what the fuck? Where's the stuff?
Yeah.
And like you could even relate that to food when you're trying to diet. It's the same thing. Like I'm a big proponent on I intermediate fast for as long as I can during the morning. I was never a breakfast person. I've kind of broken away from that whole 3 meals a day. It's just not me. I'll just eat more at lunch and dinner. But at first in the morning, my stomach would be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, where's my food? Yeah. And it's like I'm not like, it doesn't need the food. It just expects the food. And that's why you're feeling hungry. And it's just all mental. Like you just have to power through it almost. Exactly. And I could see how that could almost be correlated to trying to like overcome those emotions and that the bodily feelings of just like wanting that fix almost is like, you could just do it and give it to it, but it's not going to solve the problem. You have to work through it.
Prime example, like I have an addictive personality and I'm a big guy. Food has become my new vice. You know what I mean? It's just like, you're always going to pick something up. It's like replacing one thing with the other. And it's, now I struggle with that. So it's like, my journey's not done. I've tackled one thing, but then another thing kind of steps into its place. So it's a constant journey of trying to fight these addictions. And, there are people who don't have addictive personalities who can go out and have 2 beers or who can eat 1 Reese cup. I sure as fuck can't eat
I can't either. I love Reese's.
You know what I mean? So it's
or Taco Bell. My girl get a kick out of that.
It's challenging. And that's why I think everybody deals with their own addictions. It's like you should never shame someone because of the way they are, because you don't know somebody else's path and how they've dealt with things and why they are the way they are.
Yeah, and I would totally co-sign that. Is a lot of people will try to judge it without, like they just read it's like the famous thing is people will read the book cover, judge the person. Yeah. And like I've learned to just understand that's the way people are though. Yeah. Like most people are not going to take the time to read the whole book. Yeah. Like it is what it is. Yeah. So it's on you as a person almost to like make sure that you show a good cover. Yeah. Like you want to make sure people see you for who you actually are and not what you were or what you're trying to be. Like you got to actually like present like in the positive way. Like you have to be a positive person. You have to be a positive energy, because if you're going through life just negative and having a negative vibe to you, being upset or pissed off at life, people are going to feel that and not want to be around that. And it's like you have to kind of work through that. I want to take a final shift towards your career and kind of how that has helped you like refocus like your life, because working with animals is amazing. So like how has that kind of been like a blessing for you to kind of get over like the addiction as well, and also give you kind of some more purpose too on top of things?
So it's great. It's not all puppies and kittens like people think it is. When I was sitting at a buddy's house one day, we're just chilling, smoking weed. I'm looking through Craigslist jobs. This is back when you went on Craigslist for jobs. And I saw one for a dog daycare. And I was like, fuck it. I'm going to apply, see what happens. I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do. I was doing machining. I hated it. So I applied and I was like, listen, I love dogs. I have X amount of small dogs. I think I had 1 or 2 at the time. And I was like, I got a little army of dog figurines on my nightstand. Like, I'm your guy. And they hired me. And I started working with dogs, and I was like, this is great. Like, why would I ever go back to working with people? You also deal with a lot of people when you work with animals, because you're working with their animals. And, I've definitely built up a good communication system with clients, because they know their animal. Like, everybody knows their animal better than somebody else knows their animal. So I'm like, okay, I'm working at the daycare. I go to another daycare and they're like, hey, you want to pull an overnight and take care of like the hospital cases, like changing fluid bags, giving them medication if they need. And I did that and I was like, okay, this is, what am I going to make? $12 an hour at a dog daycare for the rest of my life, I was like, this is how I want to do it. I want to go into the medical side of things. And I started doing that. And then I was like, okay, if this is what I want to do, I got to do some sort of schooling. I was like, I need some sort of credentials to get me in the door somewhere where I can actually do what I want to do. And I found a vet assistant program. So it's not quite a technician. Technician is like a 2 to 4 year program where you actually get certified, licensed, or registered. I kind of got grandfathered in because I felt right around that time where, a lot of the older technicians, they're not certified. They've just been doing it. They just got experience. So I kind of fell in. So I went to the vet assistant program. My first job, I did my externship. Then I got hired on as a technician, and I just started learning on the job. And, I've built up my skills. I've built up my knowledge, and I think I've learned a lot more I would have. I've been in the veterinary medicine field for like 6 years. I've learned a lot more that I would have working for doctors and learning things than I would sitting in a classroom, because I just know that's how I work. And, I love it. It's like, there's hard days today. My last appointment of the day was French bulldog, not French bulldog, English bulldog, and it was time to put him down. And I experienced that on a daily basis. This one was tough. It was an old fighting bulldog. We gave it the medicine. It didn't want to go down. Still sitting there snoring and farting. And, you see these people who are losing their family members. And, it's a grown man. He's on the floor with this dog in an animal hospital crying. And it's like, how can you not relate to that? But also, how can you not want to do that? Like, I'm the one who says, okay, I'm going to take great care of him from here. Like, I'm going to get everything together for him. Like, you've done your job. You've taken care of him. Let me take that on. And somebody's sick dog, I'm going to take them. We're going to go get some blood work. We're going to go take some x-rays. Like, I'm going to take care of your pet like it's my pet. And I just love being able to, one, because I just love animals. I think they're better than people, but I also get to help their owners, and I get to give them peace of mind, and I get to fix dogs and cats. Like, you don't get to fix them all, but same thing with like rescuing. You can't rescue every single animal, but you can try and you can make a difference. And it's like, me and my wife have dedicated our life to our animals. We have 4 little dogs. We have 2 guinea pigs. We recently had birds. We recently had mice. We had fish. So it's like, that's what I revolve my life around, because there's not a lot of voices for animals either, because they don't have one. And it's like, they need advocating. So I feel like I found a field, and I love medicine. I love learning. My mother's in the medical field, and it's just, it's so interesting because science is always changing. You're always learning something new. There's not one day that I go into work where I am like, go through the whole day and didn't learn anything new. I learn something new every day. And on the other side of it, I know I'm learning. I know I'm getting better. I just got a new job. I'm going to a new hospital that's opening up. And, I got a $5 pay increase because I know that's my worth. I know the type of worker I am. I know I'm going to give you the best worth ethic I can give. And it's just so nice to have found a career that I absolutely love. Like, there's not one day I wake up, if I'm depressed, I don't want to go to work, but it's not because I don't want to do my job. It's because I don't want to get out of bed. But it's like the same thing with my wife. She was in customer service. She left, went back to retail. She loves retail. She's a store manager for a jewelry company. And, she's working Saturdays. She's working Sundays. She's working till 9 o'clock at night. But she found that passion again in what she likes to do. And I think that's so important, finding passion in your career, because you're doing it. You're doing it till you're 65, at least 75 with the way things are going now. But it's like, I love what I do. I couldn't do anything else.
That's amazing. And like, God bless you for being in that position to, when you have to put animals down. Like that was, I showed you the tattoo of my dog's paw print in my leg, and we're coming up on a year in a couple weeks. And I've lost a lot of people in my life, But losing my dog of 14 years was the worst experience that I've ever had in my life. And I mean, I did a whole podcast about a dog's love and what she meant to me. And like, it's still like to this day, like she was a Shih Tzu and she didn't bark. She didn't make a lot of noise, but my house never felt more quiet without her.
Yeah.
And that was like I'm a crier. I'm a pretty emotional guy, but for when in that situation, just to see the selflessness of like animals, like she knew what was happening. Yeah. And I remember just crying on the floor and like, she just comes over and like, it's giving me kisses and like comforting me. Yeah. Like we're about to put her down and she's comforting me.
I know.
And I'm like,
they're amazing.
We really don't deserve dogs. Like, and I said on that episode that I did, A Dog's Love, you guys can check it out, but it's the most pure, unconditional love you can experience. Like we don't really get to experience unconditional love as humans from other humans usually, but from your dog, there's obviously, even if you're a bad owner, it still loves you unconditionally. And it's like crazy.
The thing is, you wake up, you have your job, you drive to your job, you listen to your music, you text your friends, you call your family, you work your day, you go out, you meet some friends, you go see some music. Your dog doesn't have any of that. Your dog has you. You know, you are your everything to your animal. And I just don't get how people don't like animals. Like they're just so incredible. It's just it's wild.
Yeah, I think there was a quote that I saw when they were talking about stuff like this was the fact of like your dog is a portion of your life, but you're its whole life.
Yeah.
And like that just kind of hits differently. It's like, especially as she got older, there was so many times where like I could have went out and I just didn't because we always wanted someone to be home with her.
Yeah.
Because like she'd just get lonely. She'd pace and then just get anxious. I mean, we're a pretty anxious family, and dogs take the characteristics of their owners. But we just always wanted to be there. And there was so many times that I would just like not go out because I just wanted to just chill with my dog. Yeah. Like, just there's so many things, but it's like I appreciate someone like yourself that like is willing to do that. Like that's got to be one of the hardest jobs out there.
It's tough. But like a doctor explained it to me one time. You know, I've almost left the profession a couple times after like tough euthanasias because it's like you have to keep your composure because it's not about you. It's about the family. Like you can't get emotional. You know, there are times when you hug the client, you're crying, things like that. But it's like, I was like, how? I can't keep doing this. Like it's eating at me. And she was like, you're doing the last thing for the animal, like the last good deed. Like you can work with animals your whole life. There's nothing you're going to do that's more important to an animal than taking its life when it needs to be taken, you know? And that kind of resonated with me. And I was like, okay, like that's the ultimate service. Like and it's not like that's all you do, but it's
part of the job.
Aspect.
Yeah.
I think they should be able to do it with humans, but that's a different
I'd probably co-sign that, but that's a whole different conversation. And probably one day, I mean, the way things are going is having that option, like, because it not to go too deep into it, just think about people who just struggle when they're older and like you don't if you don't want to suffer, why should you? Like you should have that option if you needed to. Yeah. But we are coming towards the end of the podcast, and this has been a fucking fantastic podcast. Yeah, it's been good. I do have that last question for you.
Yep.
But is there anything that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say, like not related to that last question, but I just want to give you a chance before?
No.
Okay, cool.
No, I think this went well.
Yeah. So, Tyler, the last question I have for you is, what would your advice be to someone who wants to pursue their passion?
I think you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to exert everything in you if you truly want to do it. You know, you really gotta go for it with your all, and you gotta be confident because confidence is key. We have a little running joke in veterinary medicine that like because when you got to draw blood from an animal, if you say it's a good vein, then you're not going to be able to hit it and you're never going to get the blood. Every time I go, ooh, that's a good vein, because I have the confidence. I know I'm going to get it. And there are a few times when I don't get it, but I chalk it up to a bad vein. But, you know, confidence is key. You have to know your worth, and you have to go into things knowing your worth.
Perfect. This has been a fantastic episode, man. I appreciate you coming on this podcast and just being as vulnerable as you have been. Like episodes like these are kind of like the reason I love doing this podcast. It just like, I really needed this episode too, just like something like this to kind of like really kind of remind me of why I do these things. So I appreciate for you just wanting to do this, man. For the listeners, if you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. Check it out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you want to watch your podcast, you go on YouTube, search The Carroll Connection or at Jared M. Carroll. Should pop up for you. And again, if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at The Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So, until next time, guys, peace.